My name is Simon Wayman, and I'm going to talk about a partial deciphering and analysis of part of the Voynich Manuscript, the star page 68R. First insights into the script for me were started by Professor Stephen Bax when he deciphered some letters and words, showing that it was possible to read some of the manuscript. He also showed how he had done this and encouraged others to bring their skills to help the process. If you're not familiar with this decoding of the Voynich, then look for the 2 videos by Stephen Bax on YouTube for an introduction. I have used this as a basis for my analysis and hope to enlarge upon his work. These are the video titles. I'll put this and other information about the manuscript on the screen at the end of this talk. Thanks to Stephen Bax for his work on the Voynich and opening his website for anyone to post their ideas. I'm using a method of analysing the patterns of words and symbols in the manuscript, in much the same way that Stephen Bax has built up possible sounds of the letters of the Voynich by finding them in different words. I'll try to provide patterns of words which are consistent and meaningful. I'll be using his pronunciation of letters and building on his work. It might look at first like I'm assuming certain things without proper proof, but I've found lots of evidence which I'll build up for you so you can see the logic of it. Please be patient at the beginning and you will see how the data cross-links and gives credibility to it all. This is page 68, which I'm working on. You can see its 64 star names and charts, which could be useful in working out the star names and possibly something about the astrology as well. This analysis has to explain all the elements of the 3 charts. It needs to be consistent throughout, so we need context. There must be links between them all. The 3rd chart possibly means 4 seasons, 4 zodiac signs, in this case Taurus and spring. Moving anti-clockwise we have Leo, summer, next Scorpio, autumn, and Aquarius and winter. The 4 segments could be telling us seasons rather than signs, or both. It shows stars of these 4 quarters, possibly equinoxes and solstices. Let's move on to look at what we know. Here's an enlarged view. We did know a little from Stephen Bax. He pointed out the word Taurus in the 10 o'clock position, which possibly means bull for the zodiac sign Taurus, and 7 stars in a cluster, which could be Pleiades, also known as the 7 Sisters, which is joined to the central moon by a line. He also pointed out the other star, number 54, as Tishtar or Tistria, an ancient god from the Avesta, who was normally associated with the star Sirius. He didn't know why Tistria should be there. If it is next to the Pleiades, it should be Aldebaran, the follower. The Avesta is a collection of Iranian Persian hymns from the 5th century. He also showed a similar looking astrological chart from the same date, but containing all the zodiac signs, with Taurus in the same place, which gives confirmation of astrology. These charts were to be read anti-clockwise. The first question which is apparent is why is Taurus so important on the chart, as it is normally the 2nd sign of the zodiac. Where is Aries? Why are other signs not named? There is an answer to part of it. Today spring starts with the sun in Aries, but this changes through time. Because of the wobble of the Earth on its axis, the stars move in relation to the seasons over a period of about 26,000 years. This is known as precession of the equinoxes, getting earlier. The result of this is the stars which mark the spring equinox will appear to move a month, or a star sign, in approximately 2,100 years. This means that approximately in the year AD1, the spring equinox would have been just moving from Taurus to Aries. Here are the beginnings of 3 lists of moon mansions from earlier times. The charts all start with the Taurus stars and finish with the Aries stars, which aren't shown here. We have the Avesta, Hindu and Chinese charts. You can see that Altair, Aldebaran are the first of each of the stars. If we look again at the Taurus part of the 3rd chart and assume an earlier date, then Taurus would now be at the beginning of the astrological year and Pleiades at the equinox. This being so, the chart isn't wrong, it's just from an earlier date. The question which now arises is, why did the people who wrote the Voynich not make the change? One possibility is the worship of the bull. It was a major part of many beliefs and religions for many years, including the Apis bulls of the Egyptians, Zoroastrian beliefs, the Minoans, and Sumerian cultures. And now to the actual analysis. The first thing I checked was to see if there were any matching stars, any matching names, and there were none. Stephen Bax has said there was no standardization of words at that time, so we should expect a degree of variation in the spelling. He showed manuscript writing from the same date as the Voynich, with many variations in spelling, even on the same page. I was then able to allow for some variation in the names, and so started the search for something which would unlock its secrets. Of course, there is a real problem with comparing stars which almost match. That is, you can't say that there really is a coincidence, like doing a crossword puzzle which doesn't have to be right. The only way to be sure is to keep on adding to the matches until they cross-link and the likelihood of chance becomes so small that you can start to trust what you are seeing. Also, the bigger picture of what is being shown on the charts should become evident. When that happens, we can start to believe it's real. If you could imagine now that you could suddenly understand the real Voynich words, there would be variations. They must be there. Stephen Bax had numbered all the stars on the page, so I'll be using his numbers. You can find these on his website, stephenbax.net. I'll put it on the screen at the end of this talk. I saw there was damage to a star name on chart 3, star number 59. There is a fold in the page and there is some ink loss. You can see it here. I found a match for this word near the top of the page, which is enlarged here. There are 2 C's, an O, 2 more C's with a P in the middle of them, and what looks like a G at the end. And this is a good match, so it's probably the same. To help identify the words in this chart, I produced a chart where all the words are given a number or a letter. This makes it easy when I refer to them. It's also on Stephen Bax's website, here, so you can follow what I'm saying and download it and use it if you want. I'll put it on the screen again at the end. Here is the name with 68R3 because it's the 3rd chart, and A2 for identification. I found another match for these 2 names on chart 1, and that is star number 5. The CCs are probably not joined in the A2 word, and they are on star 5, but otherwise a very close match. So it's linking the 1st and the 3rd charts. I came to see this variation of 2 C's being joined in one name and separate in another as common among the star matches. I've built up an understanding of how the variation occurs, and as I'm presenting this information, I'll point them out as we go. This gave me hope that there might be more close matches which would be significant. I'd always had a strong idea that I should let the manuscript speak to me and just let it unfold. The patterns will emerge if they are there. I would have to work out what they meant as I went along and try to get into the mind of the author. After some considerable effort, I'd found quite a lot of close matches, mostly pairs but sometimes 3 matching names. Some were linking charts 1 and 2, some on charts 1 and 3, some on 2 and 3, and some were twice on the same page. I didn't know what the stars were or what it meant, so I pressed on. Stephen Bax had mentioned star 54, next to Pleiades, as possibly being Tiria. Then he found another, star number 43, on the second chart. I found another one, star number 29, on the first chart. The names are similar, so let's compare them. If we look at letters now, the 8 is probably a T, the 2 joined C's are an E sound, the O is an A, then the letters are Sh, another T, and the A is an E on A. And probably we don't pronounce the G on the end, the N sound, as it's probably grammatical. And so that gives us T, Ash, T. Star 43 reads T, O, Ash, T. Again without the N. And lastly, star 29, Tash, E, Ot. It's very interesting that the Ash from the previous names has jumped backwards in front of the T. Again, the variations are typical of what I've been seeing. Gaining a C on star 43 and 29, and an A on the end of star 54. When the variations are so specific, it shows a real process is happening. This seems to indicate Tiria is important to the Voynich authors, and no accident, so Tiria could be their name for Aldebaran. Tiria was connected to Sirius in the Avesta, but seems to be Aldebaran in the Voynich, so I researched Sirius. The history of naming the star Sirius goes back to the ancient Egyptians. They named it after Osiris, one of their important gods. Its heliacal rising, which is in early August, heralded the coming of the rains and the Nile floods. It's also the brightest star in the sky. These two factors meant that Sirius has kept its association with the rains even till today. Sirius is also derived from the ancient Greek Sirios, meaning glowing or scorcher, due to its brightness. Here is another Iranian connection, with links back to the Zoroastrian religion, which is a continuation of Avestan beliefs. Here is part of a chart showing both Tiria, which is a variation of Tiria, and Tier, associated with that month. The name Tier is still the Iranian name for their equivalent month of August, and has always been associated with the rainy season. However, it still doesn't explain why Tiria was moved to Aldebaran. We might not expect to see Sirius in an astrological chart, as it's actually in Canis Major, and not a zodiac star at all. But according to Iranian astrology, Sirius was, and still is, in the constellation of Cancer. This was due to the time of its heliacal rising, when the Sun was in Cancer. In modern astronomy, Sirius is in Canis Major, the Great Dog, and often called the Dog Star. After finding that, I wondered if Tier would be on the charts. Well, here it is, or rather they, star 27. It seems clear that there are two words here. The pronunciation is A-R, and the second T-E, and then Ur, Te-Ur, Tor, something like that. Star 32 is Ator, Atur, and star 48, there are two words. I'll just work on the main word for now. I've good reason to think that this second word is an addition to the name. So we have A, T, E, ear. That is at ear. The pronunciation of all of them is close to Tier. The or on star 27 and the other word on 48 are probably separate words. There are a few star names with two words. I found star number 32 and 48 to match well if we omit the O. These O's could be grammatical and are typical variations appearing on the beginning of words. We'll see these and others as we go. Tier is on the chart 3 times, so it must have some importance. Let's see where they are. Tier is here twice, which is a surprise, and Tiria. Here on the first chart, Tier is next to Tiria, and there is star 559 at the top. Here's another new star name. This is the most common name on chart 3. These are the first 3 stars, number 3 and 28 on chart 1, and star 47 on chart 2. The 3 underneath are some other versions of the name from chart 3. The first star name, star 3, would be pronounced Al-E-O-A-Tun. The next is Al-A-E-O-Tun. Star 47, Al-E-O-A-T-Er. The next 3 names from the third chart, number 4, Al-E-Atun. Number 5, without the O on the beginning, without the A on the beginning, La-E-Otun. And 6, Al-U-Atun. Let's look at the spellings. We can see an al followed by vowels. There is a consistent variation within the vowels, joined and separated CCs, and C, O, A and I, which come and go and move position. The O disappears from the beginning of number 5. It appears after the L in numbers 2 and 5. This is typical of the variations I've been seeing. We've just seen tier with O's on some words. This is a difficult thing to get across to anyone. I'm showing you all these different words and telling you they're all variations of the same word. There are 2 ways to prove that this is true. The first is if the names form a reasonable pattern on the charts. The second is to see a pattern within the words themselves. In other words, the variation of spelling should form a pattern in its own right. Please bear in mind that I've been looking at these star names, which I think are matches, for long enough to see how they vary. This is the most common word on chart 3, so it must be important, but the name isn't obvious. Then I realised that if we look at the Taurus segment of the third chart, there is a line joining the drawing of Pleiades to the centre of the chart. It looks a bit like balloons on a string. Look more closely and it's actually joining it not to the moon but to a word, the word we've just seen. So could this word mean Pleiades? The most likely name for it would be Al-Taurus. It seems to be an Arabic word from the al at the beginning, but it doesn't match our word. We'll just have to wait and see. I'll call it Pleiades for now and see where it is on the charts. Let's plot them up and see where they are. There are those 3 stars, Tiria, Pleiades and Tiria, together on the second chart, and a second tier at the top. And look, Pleiades is next to Tiria, which is possibly Aldebaran. Now that is interesting. And now the first chart, there they are again, together. This time with another Pleiades at the top. Also star 559 is up there too. This is a surprisingly good match, with these 3 stars being together twice. I think this must be more than chance. and Pleiades is close to Tiria, Aldebaran again, as might be expected if there is a real connection. Now we really are seeing patterns starting to emerge. There is an extra Pleiades on chart 1 and an extra Tier on chart 2 we need to explain. But it's very encouraging. These three names, Tiria, Tier and Pleiades, are the most common ones on charts 1 and 2 and seem to be linked. Encouraged by the match between Tiria and Pleiades, I looked again at the Pleiades name. I noticed a version of the name that ended 8AR, Ter, and then I realised that by swapping it round and putting the Ter after the Al, the name becomes Al Ter E Or, which is a good match for Altirea. The other names can also be changed round. We need to drop the N, the G, from the end. Then it produces Al T Oa. The second one, Al Ta Eo. Al Ta Ia. The fifth, Ul Ta Eo. And the sixth, Al Ta Ua. And all of them sound close to Altirea. Now it's really starting to make sense. There may be a linguistic reason for changing it round. It could just be a strange coincidence. If I can reasonably prove Pleiades by its position, then it must be worth considering. We can already see this on the charts to some degree, and just wait to see how it builds up. It's marvellous that we have such a tool to do that. Here's another new star name, stars number 21 and 30. This is an interesting pair of words. As you can see, there is some artistic decoration here. This is the first time I've had to deal with a letter which is not standard. It looks like an L or a P, which then goes off into a flourish. Here are the two possible letters. They both start the same, up, across and down, either straight down for the L or down and back across for the P. The L, the L, is a common letter, but the P has appeared in very few words which have been translated. If you look carefully at the first flourish, it's smooth and flowing. The second flourish, you can see that the scribe has stopped halfway, possibly to check the first one, and then continued, finishing it exactly the same, presumably to make the names look similar. The scribe might have done this deliberately to show the two names are the same, as they don't appear elsewhere on the charts, or just because he could. Also, the flourish finishes on the joined Cs, which could change the pronunciation from an E to a Ch or a Ch sound. I've taken the letter with the flourish to be a P. The name I found for this star is a Apausha, again from the Avesta. The names look quite different, but when we pronounce them, they are similar. I have assumed the G, the N, on the end is not pronounced. The first word is Pa U At Ch or Ch, and the second is A Pa Ash E Ch or Ch. So that's Pa U At Ch, Apashicha, and both words are very similar to Apausha. In the Avesta, Apausha is a star described as the demon of drought and the opponent and opposite of Sirius, who brought the rains. Apausha would have been in the sky rising during the hottest part of the summer, and then, when Sirius rose, the rains would come, so the myth would be played out in the stars. except in the Avesta, Sirius was called Tiria. But we know Tiria in the Voynich is assigned to Aldebaran, and, as discussed earlier, Sirius is now probably Tier. If that is so, we would hope that the new star Apausha would be associated with Tier, Sirius, on the charts. Here it is, added to the plot on chart 2, star number 30, next to Sirius, next to Tier, as it should be. This is good confirmation. That was the Tier that was on its own. Here on chart 1, star 21, we see it's not just next to Tier, but it's also next to the other two stars as well. This is a significant correlation. Now we have 4 stars next to each other. Actually, 2 pairs of stars, which mark the spring equinox, including the start of the astrological chart, and the rainy season. These 2 events are probably the most important of the year. Now we have a second Avestan name, which helps to confirm Tiria. It also confirms Tier as the Voynich name for Sirius. Realizing that Apausha could have been an unfamiliar name lends weight to the idea that the Voynich scribe deliberately marked these names with a flourish to show they were connected. It might also be the reason that Tiria was marked next to Pleiades in the Taurus section, as Tiria had moved from its normal place at Sirius. I had been wondering which star Apausha was in the sky. I found a nice reference which could answer the question. Procyon, in the constellation of Canis Minor, is from the Greek and means preceding the dog, so called from its rising before Sirius, the dog star. This is likely to be the name by which we know Apausha today. Like Sirius, it's not a zodiac star, but it's significant in its rising time. I now feel that we can begin to trust these star matches as being correct, but still, of course, we need more. I found another star, number 8. The spelling is straightforward. Al-H-On. Al-Ch-On. That's with the G being pronounced the N on the end. The name I have found for this is Alcyone. It's the brightest star in the Pleiades cluster, the Seven Sisters. It was, and still is, a well-known star from Greek mythology, where the Seven Sisters' father was Atlas and their mother Pleione. I was surprised to see this on the charts because it's not a moon mansion. Actually, it's within a moon mansion, but it is a well-known star. And if we look, we see where it is on the charts. There it is next to Pleiades, so it's possibly right. It also helps to confirm Pleiades. The next one I found is star 9, pronunciation Al-Nutn, but in this case we don't pronounce the N, the N, so it's Al-Nut, and this is Elnath. It's the second brightest star in Taurus. It had the traditional name of Elnath or Alnath. The modern name is Elnath. It's an Arabic word, so requires us to add a vowel. It's in Taurus on the tip of the right horn. The star Elnath used to be shared with the constellation Auriga. Now it's only in Taurus. Poor old Auriga, the charioteer, has lost his foot. On chart 1, it's next to Alcyone and Pleiades, and as you can see, forms a neat triangle of Taurus stars. This gives me confidence in all 3 star names. As we already have Tiria as Aldebaran, the brightest star in Taurus, it means Taurus is very well represented on this chart. Now Pleiades, which was on its own, is supported by 2 other stars. It's on the bottom of the chart next to Tiria, Tier and Apausha. On the second chart, it's next to Tiria and Tiria. On the third chart, it's joined by a string to the drawn Pleiades and next to Tiria. It's at the top of the chart here, the top spoke of the chart, and twice at the 3 o'clock position. There are so many supporting matches it just has to be right. It also means that Tiria is right as Aldebaran. It's marvellous how this process works. The more stars we get on the chart, the more powerful it becomes. So now we see the change name of Altirea must be correct. The linguistics experts can try to work out why it changed. We have another star name, star 16. It reads A-F-E-O-R. Afeor. I'm tending to ignore the O at the beginning, as that could be grammatical. This could be Polaris. It's a fair match for polar. The position of this star gave the clue to what it might be. It's in the centre of the stars on the first chart. Actually, it's in the exact centre. Looking at the whole of chart 1, there is a circle drawn round the stars, the same as the other two charts. If you look at the actual star drawn next to star number 16, there is a dot in the centre. This point is the centre of the circle, as it was drawn with a pair of compasses. I printed this out and tried it for myself, and it works perfectly. The star has been drawn around this central point. There is no central star on chart 2, which could mean it has a significance as Polaris was well known as the North Star. It was called, amongst other names, the peg in the sky around which all others revolve. It was universally used for navigation and was consequently a very important star. The centre of the circle may mean nothing, but we can't afford to give up any clue which might help us. I have come to respect the intelligence with which this manuscript is put together, like the flourish which links the two Apausha stars, and other things I haven't mentioned here. So far, the named stars that we've seen here are from a variety of sources. Tiria and Apausha are Avestan. Tir is from Persian, Iranian. Altirea and Elnath, Arabic. Alcyone is Greek, and Polaris, Latin. This certainly widens our view of where these names come from. No wonder they are so hard to find, just like everything else in the Voynich. I found the word ter in various places associated with star names. On the third chart it's here and here. That's B6 and 41. It could be a shorter version of Terran, Taurus or bull. Even though it's a very common word, it could have more than one meaning. Here are words 11A, 11B on the third chart, in the 3 o'clock position. Here it is turned round. It seems to be a composite word of ter plus the second half of Pleiades. Here is Pleiades after it. In fact, it's before it as well. There's Tiria, Pleiades, a composite of ter plus the second half of Pleiades, and Pleiades again, which must have some significance. To summarise, I think that we've made some good progress with naming the stars, especially because each star has at least 2 pieces of supporting evidence to confirm it. Also, some sort of pattern is starting to emerge. Now if we step back and see what the charts themselves might mean. Chart 3 seems to be the key to the other 2 charts. It gives zodiac constellations and seasons, and stars linking from different parts of charts 3 to charts 1 and 2. On the first 2 charts, some stars appear twice. Pleiades on the first, Tiria on the second. Some stars are on both pages, so it's not quite so straightforward as it might have seemed. There's more to understand and more to find. We're not trying to guess what we will find, we are seeing what the charts have to tell us. Thinking you already know the answer is one of the biggest mistakes. At the top of chart 1 we have star 5 and 59, which comes from here on chart 3 in the opposite section from Taurus. Presumably it's Scorpio, which makes it autumn, so we can add autumn to the name of that star. There's another star match from here, this time in Leo, the summer part, star 62. It matches star 6. We don't know the name of this star, or even how to pronounce it yet, but we can still compare them. Star 6 has an O, 2 joined C's with an L through the middle, a C and a G. And star 62, a separate O, 2 joined C's with an L through the middle again, a G, and this one has an 8, a T on the end. That's a pretty good match for the Voynich, so we can add it to the first chart as 662 summer. Even though we don't know the name of these stars, we can still use information from their position. The stars marked on the first chart show spring, with Pleiades as equinox, Alcyone and Elnath, then summer and autumn. As the autumn star is opposite Pleiades on chart 3, it could be the autumn equinox. So the top chart shows the summer half of the year, possibly equinox to equinox, even possibly summer solstice too, with star 662. That matches with the sun high and summer and the heliacal rising of stars for the meaning of this chart, at least for the top half of the chart. What we couldn't see on that last slide was the autumn star 559, which is opposite Pleiades on the third chart, here. And then they are next to each other at the top, A1 and A2, and then at the top of chart 1, showing another possible equinox link. Equinox incidentally means equal night, the points in the year when the day and night are of equal length. Look again at the Pleiades word in the centre of the third chart. The word next to it is almost identical to the first word on the page, above chart 1. Also, I realised it was the first part of the word written on the sun. Then I saw the word next to it in the centre of the third chart. It was the second half of the sun word, just with an added O on the beginning. Then I read the word on the sun, Eek, een, Cash, which I read as equinox, ignoring the N on the end. Look above equinox on the sun and we see we have 8 ARG, which is Tiria, which then reads Taurus equinox. The T, the 8, is a bit lost in the hair, but the Voynich site said it's a T, and they're usually right. Now continue round the third chart centre. There's another word we don't know, and then T once again. So it could read something like Pleiades, equinox, something Taurus. Possibly Pleiades equinox begins Taurus, something like that. And I think that's all very convincing. Incidentally, when I first saw Eek, een, Cash, I was actually looking in Google Translate to find out what equinox was in other languages. I just got to Turkish and saw equinox. When I looked back down at the chart, it jumped out at me. This is just a classic case of working out what should be there, so you're ready for it when you see it. I could be wrong, of course, with the meaning of this word, as I'm no linguist, but I know it's significant because of its connections. I'm sure the linguistics experts will have something to say on the subject. In summary of what we've seen, I feel confident that the identification of star names can be accepted as there is so much cross-linking of evidence. It's especially interesting to be able to evaluate Pleiades, Altorea, with its turned around name, by incorporating the many other pieces of supporting evidence. So we have named stars singly, in pairs and threes. We've seen important stars together in the charts, as we might expect. We've proved the meaning of some parts of the page with stars linking from the three charts. We have star names from many sources: Arabic, Greek, Avestan. We have a genuine variation of star names. We can be sure that these are the same words. We can expect similar variations throughout the script of the Voynich. We've also confirmed Stephen Bax's pronunciation of letters. This works very well. We've been using patterns in the charts to confirm words which would otherwise only be speculative, and that's a very useful tool to have. We see meaning and context, and this is particularly useful with a script that we don't know. There could be other uses of words. There are star names which are common in the manuscript and could have other meanings. Tier, Sirius could be used as a time of year for the rainy season. We've already seen Tier used as August elsewhere. If they are, then we should see them in the plant sections as times to plant, to harvest or collect seed. Perhaps Ter could be Taurus, spring or bull, or all three. Akash or cash is such a frequently used word in the Voynich, it might mean night or something similar. Any of these words could have other meanings as well. It's certainly worth looking out for these words in other parts of the manuscript. It's interesting to note that many of the elements in the charts could have been unusual to the reader and perhaps shown for clarification. Taurus as the first sign of the astrological chart, and it's marked on the chart. Next to the drawing of Pleiades we see Tiria instead of Aldebaran. We see a line drawn to connect the drawing of Pleiades to a change version of Altorea. The Apaltia names are marked with a flourish to show they are the same word. And Polaris is drawn exactly in the centre of the first chart to show the stars circling round it. Tiria, however, is shown without any extra information, as if it were the normal name for it. The lack of any emphasis might tell us that this was normal for them. I have found a real intelligence within these charts. It's well planned and thought out, and similar in layout to other star pages. This must have taken a lot of time to design. Tiria is seen as a name for Aldebaran. It appears next to Pleiades on charts 1 and 2, and next to the drawing of Pleiades on chart 3. It's also one of the two Avestan names used as a star. It wasn't obvious why Tiria was used here. The answer may be, to Persian astrologers, Aldebaran was known as a royal star, Tashita, watcher of the east. Tashita is a version of Tiria. Also, it marks the vernal equinox. In the chart we see Aldebaran, Tashita, vernal equinox, watcher of the east, and then Regulus, Venant, Antares, Sativis, and Fomolo, Haftorang. They mark the constellations Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Pisces Austrinus, the southern fish, which is the constellation below Aquarius, and not on the plane of the ecliptic, but it does have a very bright star, Fomolo. In astrology, the royal stars of Persia were Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and Fomolo. They were regarded as the guardians of the sky in approximately 3000 BCE, during the time of the ancient Persians in the area of modern-day Iran. The Persians believed that the sky was divided into 4 districts, with each district being guarded by one of the royal stars. This matches the layout of the third chart very well. It also gives a reason why Tiria was Aldebaran. It's shown here as marking the equinox, and at some point Tiria would have had its turn in marking that point. Also, the worship of the bull is a major part of the Zoroastrian belief. It has been for many years and throughout many cultures. Maybe it was too strong a belief to let go, and Taurus remained the start of the astrological chart. We now have strong links to Persia. The Iranian-Persian origin for Tiria and Apaltia from the 5th century Avesta, Tiria used for Aldebaran in the Zoroastrian calendar, and the use of Tier for Sirius, and its use as August in the Iranian calendar. Tier appears on Iranian astrological charts, and it's interesting to note that the Iranian year starts at the spring equinox. Why would a group of people choose to stay with an old concept? This might be due to people who were suppressed or conquered and were clinging on to their old beliefs and not wanting to accept a foreign culture or even use its writing system. Having seen the connection to Persia in the charts, it's easy to see that Persia, along with the Middle East, across North Africa to Spain, was conquered by Arab-speaking Islamic armies in the 8th century. There, of course, were many people affected by such events throughout the years. This could be a possible explanation. As for Taurus, it's shown as the start of the Voynich chart, and Pleiades as the equinox. The obvious question is, could they use such a chart for astrology? Today it's well known that Aries starts all modern astrological charts, but what most people don't recognise is that we are currently in the age of Pisces, not Aries. In fact, we are shortly to move into the age of Aquarius, the new age as it's known. Here's a quote from Wikipedia. The Sun's placement upon the vernal, the spring equinox, which occurs annually around the 21st of March, defines the starting point for measurement, the first degree of which is historically known as the first point of Aries. The first 30 degrees along the ecliptic is nominally designated as the zodiac sign Aries, which no longer falls within the proximity of the constellation Aries, since the effect of precession is to move the vernal point through the backdrop of visible constellations. It is currently located near the end of the constellation Pisces, having been within that constellation since the 2nd century AD. This means that we are currently in the age of Pisces, but Aries is the beginning of the astrological chart. This doesn't seem to matter when drawing up charts for present-day astrologers, so the Voynich people, using Taurus as the first sign, presumably had no problems either. There seems to be a history of the astrological chart starting with the wrong sign. It means that we had left the age of Aries in 100 AD. 2,100 years before that, in 2000 BCE, we would be at the end of the age of Taurus. So 3000 BCE, Taurus really would have been rising in the spring, and Pleiades would have marked the equinox. So finally, what have we learned from page 68R? The astrological chart starts in Taurus. Pleiades marks the equinox. We have new star names, genuine variations of names with obvious patterns. The charts and star names link in a logical way. There is context within the charts and between the various elements. There are strong links to Persia and Iran, and also to the Avestan and Zoroastrian beliefs. And there is a lot more information to extract from the page, particularly in the construction of words. The first stars which have been found are those that are mentioned several times. Probably the more times they appear, the more important they are to the Voynich makers. It also means they are easiest to find. we could expect that some stars might be very difficult, but at least we've got something to work with. The information here is just the start of the analysis of this page. There's a mass of work to do. There are plenty of threads that I'm already working on. The progress is slow but workable. I am already preparing more information to share. It will be posted on Stephen Bax's web as it's ready. There may be another video, but not for a while, as it takes a huge amount of time to prepare. I'll put some useful websites on the screen as we finish, so you can find more about this fascinating document. And I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.